Hi everyone, welcome to THT, and today we're going to talk about week 4 of the Planetary qualifiers for set 3. And before we start, I just want to give a shout out to all the players from my testing group who did some great performances this weekend. Again, we got a SIP winning PQ Warsaw, DS winning PQ Dallas, Co winning PQ Strasbourg, Dylan top 2 in PQ Hof, Jadimir top 4 in PQ Charleroi, T95 challenged top 4 in PQ Hof, Beton top 4 in PQ Warsaw, Avastator and Lothar top 8, respectively top 8 and top 10 in PQ Warsaw, and Just Silk with a top 8 in PQ Southampton and Norwich, with none other than Gar-Saxon Yellow and Mace Blue, which is great performances with some very out-of-the-box deck, as usual, as he always likes to do it. So let's get into this. There's so many PQs and so many deck lists that I've decided to do the video a little bit differently, where I'm just going to talk about what I think are the most important, the lists that I thought were worth talking about in terms of like out-of-the-box gameplay that we've seen from it, as well as the most interesting list overall, so instead of just talking about every single list. And another thing that I've decided to do is, so we do like a global kind of analysis of the meta at the end. So without further ado, let's get into the PQ turn-off here, which we have some interesting results with Palpatine Blue. I think Palpatine is still one of the strongest deck in the game. The only problem is that it's quite weak to aggro. Obviously, we're in a quite aggro tempo meta, which makes playing Palpatine Blue difficult to play, or any sort of Palpatine decks, for that matter, difficult to play. But I believe that among those decks, among the decks that have a bad matchup against aggro, if you hope that you can dodge those matchups, then Palpatine is great. As you can see, he was able to win against Queenland in the final here, which is quite surprising, because I think it's a good matchup for Queenland, but it's far from unwinnable for Palpatine. It's a very small PQ though, so don't draw too much conclusion out of it. There's an Anakin list, Anakin yellow list. I just wanted to take a look at. This list is very similar to the Anakin yellow list that I posted in my original videos, where I did kind of, I made a section of list that I've built for Twilight of the Republic, that really emphasize on now there's 2 of them, try to get the R2D2, Anakin, and get into now there's 2 of them, and then you get now there's 2 of them into Anakin, into Plo Koon. So it's kind of cool list that I thought was quite interesting, and I think that it's not the most reliable, right, but it has basically, it is kind of a Queenland red, but just adapted with Anakin. Which is going to have a weaker flip turn. The flip on 5 is just so much better, especially when you're playing with Plo Koon. But it's overall stronger leaders once it's deployed. So it's kind of a choice to make. Queenland Red turned out to be like kind of the thing that people kind of gravitated towards. But me, very early on, I just wanted to show that list because it's very similar to a list that I've shown earlier. We also have a Cat Bane control deck, the Cat Bane Blue, which seems to be the go-to option as far as if you're going to go for yellow, blue, black control decks. Even though it does play quite a few units, it's still very much a control deck, and that's kind of the option that people are gravitating towards as far as this particular color combination. Very diverse meta, as you can see, kind of one of each leader here, very, very diverse. Just those 2 Queenland Reds in there. Then we get PQ Zaragoza, 54 players, with once again a very diverse cast of different leaders. Yoda Blue, which still shows from time to time. Sabine Yellow, which is definitely a deck that I feel like is very underestimated. It's a very powerful deck. Just I feel like in set 2 there's no really much reason to play Sabine Yellow over Sabine Green, but this new set, Yellow White got so many strong cards that I believe that Sabine Yellow has become a lot more viable of an option than it used to be. Boss Blue still making results, as you can see, and Palpatine Yellow managed to sneak here quite high up in the rank of this. So it's an hostile meta for Palpatine, but Palpatine still managed to pull off some performances. I figure that Palpatine has benefited a lot from this set, from set 3. The ability to swarm the game with a lot of small units has made the Palpatine's leader's ability a lot more useful overall compared to previous sets. So, on one hand, yes, the meta is very bad for Palpatine, but on the other hand, Palpatine did benefit a lot from having those token units that are very easy to kill and recursive units. Moving on, we got this the PQ Norwich, and then I would just wanted to emphasize on the winner here with Han 1 Blue. This list is very interesting. So it's pretty much... So we saw Han Blue with Ysera was playing a very Republic-based list. This list is a lot more standard, I would say, for a Han Blue. With all the good cards that you can expect from this color combination. I love the fact that he plays Jayla's lightsaber, as he plays Grogu and Yoda and Ezra, so he can very reliably go turn 1, Force, turn 2, Jayla's lightsaber, which I think is very, very powerful if your opponent doesn't have an answer for it. Obviously, if you're playing against a deck that plays Whaley and stuff like this, you're not going to go for this, but in certain matchup, especially for example against aggro, this can be an extremely effective opening. Loads of Sentinel units here with Village Protectors and Concordant Interceptors in space. Some game against control here with the Tech DJ combo. And the Spark of Rebellion, out of aspect Voltho, which I think can really put a lot of people off guard. A lot of removal in the sideboards, and the strongest 7 drops and 8 drops you can play in this color combination. Just a very solid list, so I think I like it a lot. I also like the fact that he's playing so many 3 drops, making the C3PO extremely reliable, as the decklist emphasizes 60% chance on draw on C3PO, which is kind of neat as well. And this is definitely one of those decks where you can afford to have a very, very bad curve, quote unquote, because obviously you can play your 3 drops on turn 1 and on turn 2, which makes it so it's much smoother into the curve. So so the rest of the team, we got a boss. So we got 2 Boss Green, another Mace Blue. Mace Blue is really consistently doing well here. This is once again my friend Silk, who is piloting this deck, just a very good player. And yeah, just a very solid overall kind of healthy meta, as you can see here, with a variety of different decks. PQ Finland's a very small PQ, as we can expect from a very small country. Finland's in terms of, not in size, but in terms of population, with a pretty standard top 8. Just move on to PQ Strasbourg, which has been won by Co, using Palpatine yellow, and the rest of the top 8 is very much what you would expect here. We got a couple of Anakin, Kira's, Han yellow, and we got the Boba 2 blue, Boba 2 yellow. So I just wanted to show you that list because it's very similar to the list I feature on my channel. Couple of differences that he does play. Spark of Hope to have more chance to be able to ramp in the early shift of the game. He also likes to play 3 copies of Syndicate Lackeys, which is not something I feature in my original list. I think the reason why Syndicate Lackeys can be very powerful if you can ramp into it, especially against Han. If you're not able to ramp, then it's a lot worse. But if you're able to ramp into it, it's very strong against both Sabines and Han 1 yellow, which is nice. And since this deck is running, the Spark of Hope has more chance to ramp, so it does make sense to play some Syndicate Lackeys. Obviously, with Han, with Boba, you can give it a +1 attack, which allows you to snipe an enemy Han or an enemy later on in the game, or even like very good against Plo Koon, that kind of thing. So I like this for that reason. And then the Cat Bane out of aspect as a toolbox for human reinforcement is kind of clever as well. So some interesting change, but most of the list is quite similar from what I feature in my channel. So I don't know if you find a list from my channel or if you just had the list on his own. But nice to see this very underrated leader, in my opinion, making some results in tournaments. Then we got PQ Ludwigsburg, 53 players with a relatively standard meta. We got Mace Blue once again making a result with a very similar list that we've seen before, very similar kind of card setup. So nice to see Mace doing well. People might be asking my opinion about Mace. I think Mace has a very, very strong leader's ability and some powerful synergies. My problem with Mace is that he has a very weak leader deploy, which is kind of a bummer for leader deploys on 7. But so I think he's a competitive leader. I think he's powerful, but I don't think he's optimal. I think they're I don't think he's optimal. But it's doing well. So those tournaments, of course, very small, so I have to take things with a grain of salt. And obviously, something I always like to say in Star Wars Limited, that Star Wars Limited, the player matters way more than the deck. A very good player can win with a variety of different decks, not necessarily the decks that I would personally consider to be the best. But once again, if you're a very good player, it sort of doesn't matter as long as the deck is well built and good. And this deck is definitely competitive and good, so that's not even a question. Then we got a PQ Berlin, which we don't have any deck list, unfortunately. The PQ Warsaw with 125 players. Once again, the Polish player do a really good job at having high attendance to the tournament. I think Poland alongside the United Kingdom are two of the most where Star Wars Unlimited is particularly popular and are kind of the spearhead of the community as far as the as far as the attendance in tournaments. And this one was won by SIP, which also won another PQ in Poland. So he's obviously a player that has consistently done super well, and this time he's bringing in Jango Tarkentown. But the reason why I'm featuring this list here is because it's so different from what he used to play. He used to play like kind of the classic Jango Fett. I know the Super Racers really love the tanks. This one is a lot more lower to the ground, a lot more like small units here with criminal muscles, reckless gunslinger. So on top of the usual Death Star Stormtrooper Greedo package. So that's a kind of a different approach to the deck here, with also a very different sideboard where he completely gave up on running the Palpatines anymore, really much more lower to the ground. And the idea here is that to give himself a much better early game, notably against Han Yellow, I think that Criminal Muscle does a great job, and one of the greatest early game play you can play against Jango is you can Crafty Smugglers R337, and those are very good against Jango because they can't be pinged out and be tapped down by Jango's ability. They can't be taken down early, and they trade very, very well with those 3-1s. They can just kill basically both 3-1s over 2 turns. And Criminal Muscle is an answer to that. Just get rid of the shield, and then the 2-1 can trade with a 2-2. And yeah, so it's pretty cool. So the deck is very, very, as you can see, is very, very aggressive on a very, very low curve. So that's why you're applying a couple of smuggles to kind of make up for how quickly you're going to empty your hand. So Reckless Gunslingers armed to the teeth is here for that. We got the Geonosis Patrol Fighter as a way to exploit different small units we're playing over the tanks, which I think is a bit surprising to me. So I'll be wondering why he's running the Patrol Fighter. Maybe it's just better positioned in the current meta. And as usual with the Super Racers, they don't like running No Good To Me Dead. I think it's a mistake. I think No Good To Me Dead is so good in the current meta against Han. So I think it's a mistake, but I know the Super Racers historically have been didn't like No Good To Me Dead for some reason in general. So that's why they're not running it. But I think that this deck should do quite well regardless, because you still have the ability of Jango to tap down the enemy leaders. Yeah, so the rest of the meta, we got Han Run. This is the unread of Beton, if you wondered. And so Han Green doing second place, and that's the rest of the meta. With a variety of different decks. I'm just going to take a quick look at this Queenland Blue. As you can see, never been a massive fan of Queenland Blue, but this version is very much focused on the Republic. Now there's 2 of them to go into a Kundi Mundi or Quick Plo Koon, and loads of force units to take advantage of Thoth's with me and the Jizzle Lightsaber, so it's kind of a force blue deck, so you get a leader that is much more force. So if you compare this to the Han Blue that we saw earlier, it's a much more focus on the 4th, and on the 4th package that you have access to. You don't have access to the best false card, unfortunately, in that color combination, but you still have, now the 4th is with me, which can be quite powerful to play at the right moment. Yeah, okay. Now we got PQ, this is the PQ Durham in New York City, where, is it the PQ, yeah. No, that's the PQ New York, sorry. So that's PQ Durham that was won by a Bosk Blue. Duncan Howard is the one who won, and he was playing this interesting version of Bosk Blue. Overall, so you can see he's playing the False Choke alongside the Tarkentown in the main deck, so really want to beat on those Han Yellow with those False Choke in the main deck, and as a cost of not running Charleston. So he's not running Charleston in the main deck, and prefers to play False Choke in the main deck, which is the opposite of what I did in my list that I won Birmingham with. I'm playing the Charleston in the main deck and the False Choke in the side. Decide to focus more on beating Han Yellow. Also quite a decent card against Sabine. But I think Charleston is not great against Han Yellow, but it's good against everything else. I mean, it's good against just so many decks. 1 copy of a Bounty Hunter Crew for the mirror match. Also a couple of techs as more ways to generate card advantage. We've seen the control decks trying to find more and more cards to try to generate card advantage. We see people running strategic analysis, card like mission briefings in the sideboards in order to run more, to draw more cards, and tech is just another way to do that. It's a card that you can totally play out of aspect in this deck, in my opinion. And then 1 copy of a Fine Edition, which can sometimes be nice with Entrench and the bounty cards, even though it is unreliable. That's why I personally don't run it. Okay, so the rest of the list here, we got 2 Palpatine, and I think I wanted also to focus on that Palpatine Red, which I really like, from Jordan Hanning. This is Palpatine Red that is basically saying, I accepted the fact that I'm gonna lose against aggro, however, I won against everything else. So he's saying very high to the ground, a very high curve, Devastators, Crate Dragons, Relentless in the main deck, full package of Palpatines and Reinforcement Walker, so super high curve. Not running the Darth Vader, which is interesting. I mean, it makes sense because you can see the list is not running many good hits for Vader. So there's definitely a list that shouldn't be running Vader. This is one of them. So that does make the deck relatively budget. I mean, you do have a few Devastators, but that are quite expensive money-wise, and the Coyote Assassin, which can be expensive money-wise, but I would say I think it's a deck that's very interesting, and as you can see, it has a full package to beat. I talked about on how to counter Han Yellow, and I talked about False Choke, I talked about Scanning Officers, and I talked about Traitorous. I think those 3 cards are great against Han, and it's really nice to see all 3 of them in the same deck to really have a very solid package against Han. Because I think that the other bad matchup for Palpatine is going to be Han Yellow. So at least this way, you're not giving yourself a good matchup against aggro, but at least you're giving yourself a good matchup against Han. And if you can beat Han and all the decks that are not aggro, you are putting yourself in a decent spot. So I think it's a very cool list. And if I was going to be running Palpatine Red, I would definitely run something like this. I love the Talking Town combined with Theresus Crumbs that can be quite powerful. So it's a very greedy list, but I think it's a powerful list. We got another Palpatine Green as well. Bosk, very control, top 8 on this relatively big PQ. So if we're looking at the full, Sabine was the most played, Han was second. No Han and no only one Sabine and no Han in top 8, as you can see. So in this particular tournament, Han did relatively poorly. And Emperor Palpatine being the 3rd most played deck. That is definitely something that is not out of the ordinary. So we see a lot of Palpatine making top 8 here, but just because it was also heavily represented. So that's very interesting to see. Okay. Then we got PQOY, 24 players, and a Yoda Green taking the win here. Nice to see Yoda doing well from time to time. And then we got a PQ New York, 114 players. That was won by Lego Pizza, also known as Jan Clean, which is someone you might know from the Button Network community. His list was basically a very all-in version of Han Green. So basically, kind of the thought process of this list is to go. I'm gonna go Han, very much like one of the reasons you play Han Yellow over a Han Green is because you got the resupply. Resupply is amazing in this deck. I think that, in my opinion, a Han Yellow that consistently can draw his resupply and play it on turn 2 is gonna be one of the strongest deck in the game, in my opinion. And I know this firsthand because Han Green was my favorite deck in set 1, and still is one of my favorite deck ever. And it's in my opinion a deck that if you can draw resupply on turn 2 consistently, it's the best deck in the game. And the reason why I stopped playing this deck is because I don't like relying so much on drawing that card on turn 2, and with Han Yellow being so much stronger nowadays because of all the addition that we have from set 2 and set 3, I prefer the stability of a Han 1 Yellow, even though at its peak, Han Green is probably a stronger deck. The problem is that you rely heavily on this kind of thing. Your opponent can disturb you and that kind of thing, and can disturb your flip turn. Also, the Han Green is a deck that is a lot more easy to disturb. And so basically what Lego Pizza did with this particular list here is like, instead of saying, oh, I'm going to try to kind of make up for the weaknesses of the deck, I'm going all in on this particular combo, because you can see he's playing a lot of out of aspect card that combines very well with Ewing reinforcement. So his Ewing is the best Ewing you could ever have. You have some of the best hit on Ewing with a nice toolbox of Cat Bane to Luke Skywalker. But if you don't find the Ewing, then you're gonna have those out of aspect cards, which gonna feel bad. He's also very all in on the way he's dealing with threat. He's very secluded we have a lot of units that are very arena dependent. Right Hope, the Marauders, Modded Cohort, Echo-based Defender, all those cards, Cloud Riders, all those cards are very arena dependent. So he's gonna have to, sometimes he's gonna be in position where your opponent is gonna have in space, and you're gonna be on the ground, and you're playing in space, and you're gonna be on the ground, and that kind of thing. And you could lose the game just like that. So it's a super all-in list. It's kind of like, in my opinion, this is the kind of list that if everything goes fine and you draw everything you need, it's one of the strongest lists in the game. But I think it is extremely unstable on both the way he handles with threats and the way he has his kind of proactive plans, his reliance on being able to ramp. He also plays a couple of spark of hope to give himself more chance to ramp, and that is very dangerous. But if it works, it's just extra copies of resupply, so that's very strong. Maybe dangerous is not the right word, but just like unreliable, because it relies on one of your units dying early and that kind of thing. So yeah, it's a crazy list, but if it works, it's amazing. A couple of tranquilities in sideboard, if you wondered, are basically for the control matchups. For the control matchups, so Tranquility can basically get himself back whenever you play it. So this kind of sort of pseudo infinite loop between the two Tranquilities, which gives you infinite value over time, which can be quite strong against very controlly decks. So then the rest of the meta here, we got two Tarkin Towns. I think it's one from Bobby Sapphire, the other one from Tada. So we know the K2OD really love those. I've been very high on Jango Tarkin Town. Queenland's the Kira from Who. And actually, if you want to have a more details breakdown of this PQ in particular, Wu made a video about it, so just go check it out. Relatively standard meta as far as the results. Then we got PQ Duluth, and here we got some interesting lists coming on. The Queenland winning 2 Kylo Tarkin Town here. We've seen Kylo really popping off in this meta. Also with the Luke ECL as well, making it top 8, 100-player tournament, so that's nice to see as well. I just wanted to focus a little bit on this Obi-Wan Kenobi green deck, which is a pretty cool kind of like mid-range list. I do know I'm not a big fan of Viola Sakura, I think she depends too much on ECL, but in this case you don't really have... but obviously in this case, you got ECL and Timely Intervention, so she can be quite reliable. The unit is really really plays a lot of units. Obi-Wan Kenobi allow you to heal your units against pings, which can be very useful against Jango, and pings are just very popular in this meta between Queenland's, Cat Bane, and that kind of thing. So even though the ability remains pretty situational, it is pretty good in the current meta. The deployment is also quite strong, even though it deploys on 6. I'm just a little bit surprised that this deck is not really taking full advantage of the deploy. I mean, obviously, Jedi's Lightsaber on Obi-Wan is very strong, but here I'm very surprised to not see a Yuwong. Yuwong is like, it feels like this deck has been made for Yuwong to work very well in it. It is a Jedi, which, I know, it doesn't work with Jedi's Lightsaber, unfortunately, but it does work well with Gamorrean Guard, and it's Yuwong into Kenobi is very strong. So a bit surprised to not see Yuwong in this list. If the player can tell me why he's not playing Yuwong, that would be great, because this is such the ideal deck for Yuwong, in my opinion. And then the rest of the deck is pretty much what you expect. The Village Protector on the side is surprising as well. I think Village Protector is so good in the current meta. It's good against everything. It's good against Han Yellow, it's good against Sabine, it's good against Jango. Like, I don't see how you wouldn't want to run Village Protector in this particular meta. It's so good. Better than Arc 170, but maybe he was needing a little bit more reinforcements in space to deal with Jango. But yeah, I would play it over. I like the fact he's playing Scanning Officers. The Tarkin Town, obviously, in this meta is very clever. And a double Tranquility against Control. Those kind of decks are very weak to Control. So having an option against Control with Tranquility can be nice. Even though I'm not sure if that's actually enough. Okay. Moving on to PQ Virginia, 72 players. And once again, Han Green is taking the win. Kira Green, Queenland, Jango, double Han, Bosk, very diverse meta with some Han doing well. Then we got PQ Share Report, 45 players, relatively small PQ. And I just wanted to emphasize on the winner here, the Sabine Green list. This list is interesting as you're running the full package of General Blade over the Darksaber. I don't know if it's a budget option or if he just thinks General Blade is a better card, but it's nice to see that. Also, one Poe being swapped by an Ayla Secura once again. And it's actually not a budget option because he's running the Darksabers in sideboard. So a couple of interesting choices being made in this particular list. General's Blades can you get a -1 attack, but the fact it only costs 3 can be an advantage as it allows you to also play another 1-drop alongside, even why not a Rebel Assault, and instead of 1 attack. And then also the discount can be useful if you can You can also even play like a 3-drop alongside. No, it actually doesn't only works on Jedi, so no, you don't get the discount. But just the fact that it's -1 resource can sometimes be worthy of the -1 attack. It sometimes can be worthy to have a discount on this. So I would even encourage people, instead of just running a full set of Darksaber, to kind of do a split between the two, because there definitely might be some situation where General's Blade can be better. And the fact that he's playing Yuwang, that General's Blade can work on Yuwang, is kind of nice as well. So that's now PQ Seattle. PQ Seattle, and in PQ Seattle I wanted to feature, so was dominated by Jango, 4 Jangos here in the top 8, on a relatively big PQ as well. And on 3rd position there's a Vader that actually managed to make himself a top 4. So my opinion on Vader is that I think Vader at the moment is kind of like just a weaker version of Palpatine. I think that especially with the new set and the fact that there's just so many more options to use, Palpatine's basically, I used to like Vader more than Palpatine in set 1, because Vader would have the leader's ability of Vader would be a lot easier to use, but Palpatine now in set 3, sorry, with all the new small units you can sacrifice, I found Palpatine to be more reliable to use and more powerful, and obviously this deploy is a million times better. So in this case, you are so this time, so this guy decided to run a Vader list here. As you can see, it's very Force focused, which it has the 5th Brothers into Fallen Lightsabers, the 4th Throw, the Force Choke, and even plays the Darth Maul ECL combo, which can be quite powerful in the right situation. Also, Han runs the ECL Kylo Ren. ECL Kylo Ren is basically a 8-attack ambush, so a lot of strong ECL targets. And also, there's a fun little fun fact. This list gives me tons of nostalgia because I actually won my very first Star Wars Unlimited tournament with Darth Vader ECL, and that was way before the release of the game. Actually, that was the very first Star Wars Unlimited tournament ever organized. It was a community tournament. The card pool was not even full. It was just tons of fun. Anyway, and if you're running ECL with Super Laser Technician, there's actually a way to play Vaders on turn 3. So for this, you just need to have a Super Laser Technician and a resupply, and then so basically either 2 Super Laser Technician and a resupply, or 2 resupply and a Super Laser Technician. And if that happens, you can go turn 1 anything you want, turn 2 resupply, turn 3 ECL into Super Laser Technician, and then another resupply, and then you ran Vader turn 3, which is kind of cool. So just a little fun facts things you can do. I don't know if you did many times, but actually if you are aware that this combo actually exists, you can actually do this quite reliably. The problem, of course, this deck is probably very bad against aggro, very late leader deploy, 25 HP base is tough. So it's a deck that's probably pretty weak to aggro. But against everything else, I think it's going to be a solid list. Okay, so that's basically it for this top 8. Then we got PQ Dundee with 29 players here in New Zealand. Very small PQ. We get himself 2 Jango Red, a Han Yellow, and a Queenland Talking Town. PQ Montreal, 58 players. Once again, lots of Han, a Krennic, 2 Sabine, and a Cat Bane Kira. PQ Santiago, 77 players with a Bossk Blue win. Bossk Blue has been doing pretty well this week. I think there's 2 PQ won by Bossk Blue, if I'm not mistaken. And we got in the top 4 a very cool Hondo ECL list, which I want to talk about. So this is the double green. Traditionally, Hondo has been playing blue because there's lots of strong smuggle cards in blue. Here decides to play the Hondo Naka green, which gives him access to, of course, command. Entropy's Lackey, which is very strong with Hondo Naka because it comes out as a 6/6 for 4. Pretty nasty deck, just keeps coming back into play. We also got the Mas Hameda, which is kind of like, think about this as sort of a Pershing, but like a little bit better in this particular deck. And it's a pretty cool list. I think the Hondo Naka lists are too slow, typically. I find them to be a little bit too slow. Especially in a Talking Town environment, like you can really get very far behind early on in the game. But it's a cool list. I just wanted to show it to you guys. The Time Unit version, of course, very strong in this deck. You get the Collectioner Star Hopper, which is gonna be a 3/3 smuggle for 3. That's pretty nice. And then we got the Pirated Battle Tank, which gives him stats of 5/7, which allows him to dodge the cunning and stuff. So very really big blockers into ground. The deck is very weak in space. Basically, the only thing you have is gonna console Star Viper in ECL, which is not great, but yeah, it's just a cool, interesting list. I think Command is better than it used to be because you got decks like Jango, who play very few unique units. Commands can be quite strong in those decks, so it's kind of nice. And even have two copies of Endless Legion in the sideboard, which is definitely going to be something that can be very powerful in some very grindy matchups. Okay. Moving on now to PQ Southampton, 58 players, with a relatively standard meta, 2 Han yellow, a Gar-Saxon yellow piloted by Silk, with really good against the deck that has been doing quite well, 2 Bossk blue, so Bossk blue really doing better in this 4th week, and then that's yeah, so 50 players. PQ Pescara in Italy, 40 players, so very small PQ, but won by none other than Pre Vizsla blue. What a cool deck. It's basically, I can see, like kind of a hard control deck, a bit similar to Boss, but instead of playing the bounty package, you're running a con of card draw that synergizes very well with Pre Vizsla's ability. What I like about Pre Vizsla is like he has very good stats, becomes 4/6 and very easily become like a 6/6 saboteur when he deploys, so it's very strong leader stats. I find his leader ability to be very difficult to use, even in his deck when you're running Starwing Scouts, the I Am Your Father, and Kia di Mundi and all that stuff to draw a card, and also with the Dr. Pershing. Even despite all that card draw, I found the Pre Vizsla's ability to be very difficult to use. But it's a deck that is very strong in games, draws a lot of cards, and then it's pretty much a late game deck with a lot of units. So it's a kind of cool deck. It's if you're running Pre Vizsla, that's the way you should be running it. I don't think it's particularly strong. I don't think it's stronger than Bossk. I think Bossk is a better deck, but it's a cool deck. And then last but not least, I wanted to feature this Wat Tambor in the top 8. This list is absolutely wild. It's a swarm aggro Wat Tambor deck that is trying to emphasize the ability of Wat Tambor. When a friendly unit is defeated, you give a +2/+2 to another friendly unit. So you're playing loads of small troopers. So obviously the objective is to run like double turn 1 opening. You can go Infiltration, Demolisher quite easily in this deck. And you also have a triple dark raid package. The triple dark raid hits are not super exciting. The Gladiator Star Destroyers, Xanadu Blood, they're not the best hits for triple dark raid, but it is nevertheless a strong card. I mean, we know triple dark raid is going to be probably one of the best cards in the game next set, so it's kind of cool to see all that. I wanted to keep attention on the Sanctioner's Shuttle, and I think this card is kind of another hidden gem of this new set. It's a card that if you're running in the mirror of aggro, it's just a 2/3 for 3 that captures a unit, and not that easy to kill because it's a space unit, and it will just capture a unit, and running the coordinate is not that difficult in this deck, so I think it's kind of cool. Also the Yuang is very cool in this deck in particular because you boost something, people are going to be trying to kill the Yuang to remove the +2/+2 bonus, and then as he dies, you can just give the +2/+ using Wat Tambor, and you can run with like very large units and stuff, so it's kind of cool. And here, the double out of aspect Chaos War, so the Chaos of War for 7. I wonder in which matchup you would want to run a 7 resources Chaos of War, but here it is. So, pretty cool list. I don't know if it's any good, but once again, a player who knows this list very well still has chances to make top 8 in this kind of tournaments. It's very small tournaments, 40 players, so not necessarily surprised to see this doing well, and managing to do some results. PQ Padova, 57 players, which are much more standard. Top 8 here with Han Red taking the win. And then we have PQ Namur, 90 in Charleroi, 92 players, with variety. Another Vader Green, I actually didn't see that one. Another Vader Green making a top 8 performance here. That's kind of cool. So I just wanted to emphasize on it. I just don't want to take a look at this list. the rest of the meta, the thing also have an Iden Blue. And once again, Control making kind of a comeback here in this specific set here. We see, once again, Bossk Blue, Iden Blue in this top 8. Despite Han Yellow still being very popular, we see kind of a comeback of Control. So this is the Iden deck, running the only 1 copies of Equalize here and running 3 Lethal Crackdown. Deck is able to heal a lot, so dealing damage with Lethal Crackdown is not that big of a deal. It's also it's like more removal that can deal with Han Yellow. You combine the Takedown and Lethal Crackdown, you have a lot of ways to kill those 3/5s on turn 3, which, as probably you've seen in my video about how to counter Han Yellow, is a particularly important moment for you to be able to kill enemy units to prevent the Tech DJ combo from happening and other stuff. So yeah, this is what you would expect from Sabine, Knight in Blue. And then we got this cool Vader Green. This time is running the command center, a lot less greedy. You got some Sentinels. You don't have the crazy false package. You're playing the Vader's lightsaber in it, which is a card that can be quite powerful, but it is quite situational. So that's definitely interesting. Yeah. Sorry. And then we got PQO, 49 players. Jango Takitan, fairly similar, top 8. We'll see some Cat Bane Green every once in a while doing some cool results. And yeah, that's basically it. So we're just going to take a wrap of the video and talk about the meta as a whole. So if we talk about the meta as a whole here, we're saying that in terms of leader wins, so this leader wins the 38%, that's all color combined regardless of the thing. So this can be a little bit scary, but this only talks about the winner. And I feel like talking about winners doesn't tell you the whole story in terms of the power of the leader. In my opinion, I would rather take a look at the leader base top 8, which I think is the most representative, because for example, Han Yellow and Han Green are quite different decks. So here if you combined leader base, you realize the best deck in the game, Han Yellow is a 17%, which is not bad. I think whenever you go beyond the 20% is where things start to become a little bit scary. And then you got a meta that is fairly diverse in my opinion, with a wider variety of different decks that are able to make top 8 and makes multiple top decks. So if you look at decks that have made at least 4 top 8, you got up to there. So that's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Yeah, we got at least a good 30 decks that can, yeah, good 20, 30 decks here that have made multiple top 8, that made at least 4 top 8 appearances. I think that's pretty healthy. That is pretty healthy if you ask me. That's just a wide variety of different decks and all sort of different decks as well. If you look at the leader, it's a little bit more, it's a little scarier because Han Yellow is a bit higher, but it's still fairly balanced. It's still fairly balanced in my opinion. So that's pretty cool. I think one of the things, I think the meta pretty much has remained relatively stable since compared to the last week. I think the only major difference in this particular week is I think controls in general has done better. I think we've seen Palpatine doing a little bit better, and we've seen Bossk Blue doing a little bit better as well. But other than this, it's pretty much stable. It's pretty much what you would expect. So I think it's just a fun meta, just a lot of different decks. And my initial analysis of the meta is pretty much the same as what it was in the previous in my previous videos. I think that the meta is very diverse, but that's not because of the set 3. I think set 3 has pretty much nothing to do with the meta, to be fair. Like, okay, there's a few leaders that from set 3 that see a lot of play, but I don't necessarily think that's I think it's mostly the ban of Boba, which had a huge impact on the diversity of the meta, in my opinion. So I just want to talk also very quickly in the end of this video, just talk about people talking about the potential ban of Han, or at least something in the Han deck that deserves to be banned. I completely disagree with this. I think that there's a strong difference between a leader that dominates the meta and a leader that is on top of the meta. For me, those are two different things. Han Yellow does not dominate the meta. You can see players are not replaying to hate on Han as much as often as you would think. Not every green deck's playing 3 copies of Scanning Officers in his main deck, for example, which is something that you would very much want to do if Han was dominating the meta to that point where you would want to run. So I feel like the meta is still not fully kind of hating on the deck, which might be the reason why it's doing so well. But, and once again, the domination is not that big, so we're not even beyond the 20% mark here in terms of power level. So I think this is kind of like a pretty healthy meta, and I don't think you want to change a healthy meta. I don't think you want to fix what is now broken. And if the idea of balancing the game is just simply to ban or to nerf the most popular deck, that is, in my opinion, a wrong way to approach this. And it is wrong in 2 different ways. It's wrong because, first of all, you want to, as little as possible, you want to do that kind of intervention on the meta, because you want the player to evolve organically. You don't want to just be forcing yourself on the meta, and there's always going to be a bummer for people who love to play that deck and that kind of thing. So you don't want to do that. That's the first reason. The second reason is because the meta that you're going to get after this particular leader has been banned is not necessarily going to be better than the one. If you just, the process of balancing the game is simply just to nerf systematically the best decks, there's no guarantee at all that the new meta you're going to get from that is going to be better than the previous one. It really comes down to how oppressive this specific deck is, how does it prevent certain playstyles from existing, how much it's wrapping the meta around itself. And I think in this case of Han Yellow, it's not doing this at all. So people have been suggesting a more soft approach and like simply just preventing tech from being the combo between tech and Han, and I think, sorry, DJ and tech and Han, where, for example, you wouldn't be able to defeat the resource that has been captured by DJ, just the way it works, for example, with the Lando leader, where, once again, I don't think that's necessary. I think that DJ is a strong card, but it's not like, even, and I say this as a Bosk blue player, I think there's some counter plays to this. You can simply just kill the DJ, You still have a timing window to kill the DJ. And either the DJ is either going to be very expensive, coming at 7 resources, double yellow Han, or it's going to be coming alongside a tech. Either way, it's relatively telegraphed, and if you are being careful, and if you have the right tools in your deck in order to answer it, you shouldn't be blown out by this particular combo. So I don't think it's something that is particularly difficult to deal with. Obviously, it's definitely a strong combo, and sometimes you can win games, but I honestly don't even think it would have that big of an impact on the deck, to be fair. And I just think that it's good that we have those kind of interactions and those kind of cards that become very powerful in specific contexts with specific combo, whether those combo were intended by the designers or not. So I think that people should simply just try to beat the deck with the tools that we have, and there's plenty of them. So I don't think we are at all even remotely in the same situation as we were with the Boba situation, and that's why I was in favor of a Boba ban, and I've been very vocal about it, and I'm definitely not a favor of a ban or even a nerf of Han by any stretch. I think the meta is very balanced, and you should just simply enjoy the meta for what it is, and if you don't, just simply wait for the next set, because the next set is definitely going to have a huge impact. There's definitely lassitudes concerning the different archetypes that exist in the game, which have been kind of the same throughout the history of Star Wars Limited, but that's not really because of Han being too strong or anything like this. It's just simply set 3 not bringing enough new blood to the table, and I can guarantee you guys it's definitely going to change with the next set. So if you're a little bit bored by the lack of new archetypes emerging from this new set, that's not anybody's fault but set 3 being too weak, and that's just the way it is. Thank you so much for following that video, and congratulations to everybody who made a top 8 performances or just simply did better than what they did last time, which is honestly what you should be hoping for whenever you're running a tournament like this. And thank for everybody who's just attending those tournaments and keeping the community alive. I've been a little bit out of touch with everything that's been going on because I'm away from the Philippines, but I'm going to be taking part in a PQ very soon, and I'm hoping to do well in that. Thank you so much for following that video, and I'll see you next time, guys. Bye.